You are listening to the Hero's Journey podcast. I'm Dan Zarzana.
And I'm Jeff Garvin.
Let the journey begin. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Hero's Journey podcast, where we discuss your favorite stories through the lens of Joseph Campbell's monomyth, as well as Christopher Vogler's modern cinema-focused adaptation as presented in his book, The Writer's Journey.
Dan, it's February.
February.
As I announced in the tease that this was the month where we traditionally do a rom-com, because in my memory, that's what we've done. And I looked back, we've like one rom-com. I think The American President,
the very first February. It's literally the worst word ever to have to say. February episode was The American President, and not really done one since. February, and we've done like Say Anything and movies like that, but not in February. Let's stop saying that word.
This month, the dread god Cupid is on the hunt with his cursed bow and barbed poison arrows. In past Februaries, we have covered such classic rom-coms as Tombstone, The Time Machine, and Thelma and Louise. But this year we bring you a selection of unconventional romances because love hurts and so do we.
In third place with 7% of the vote, shocking.
Outrageous.
Leaving Las Vegas. I really thought this one was going to take second place over Lost in Translation. I was pretty sure the winner was going to win, but I did not expect Leaving Las Vegas to be at the deep, dark bottom abyss of the barrel. Second place, with 36% of the vote, went to Sofia Coppola's best-received film, Lost in Translation. In the poll, you called it polarizing.
I don't know anyone who feels meh about this movie. Either they love it or they absolutely think it's trash.
Trash.
Yeah,
wow. I need to have a conversation with those people.
I thought Michelle was going to boycott this episode if Lost in Translation didn't win, because isn't that like her favorite movie of all time?
No. You're thinking of me. I love Lost in Translation. No, Michelle's favorite love stories are Leaving Las Vegas and Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
All right. Well, we're in the booth. I love Lost in Translation too. We should have done that one anyway.
We'll do it as a bonus
just to
episode.
Spite people.
We'll do it as a bonus episode. All right. And the winner with a majority, 57% of the vote, is Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, or Isotsum for short.
Directed by Michel Gondry. This film was released on March 19th, 2004. 20 years ago.
That's correct.
Opening at number 7 in the box office the same week as Zack Snyder's remake of Dawn of the Dead was released, and also shared the theater with the Frankie Munoz action comedy juggernaut Agent Cody Banks 2 Destination London.
Oh, understandable.
Despite all that adversity, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind still managed to earn $73 million globally against a $20 million production budget.
A modest success, for sure.
Yeah.
The film stars Jim Carrey as Joel Barish and Kate Winslet as Clementine Krasinski. She was also nominated for her performance for this film. And they're both playing against type.
Yeah.
Jim Carrey, of course, is Ace Ventura: Pet Detective. He's known for his broad, wacky, comedic performances, but here he's very dramatic.
Yeah, subdued.
And Kate Winslet is usually known for her heavy dramatic roles, but she's this quirky character in this one. They kind of switched types in this one.
Yeah.
Supporting roles are performed by Tom Wilkinson, Kirsten Dunst, Elijah Wood, Mark Ruffalo, Jane Addams, David Cross.
Charlie Kaufman wrote the screenplay, one of my screenwriting heroes, and earned his third Best Original Screenplay Oscar nomination in 5 years. He was previously nominated for Being John Malkovich and for Adaptation, a film the Hero's Journey podcast covered in November of 2020. Third time was a charm for Kaufman, as he was handed the Academy Award for Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind by none other than Samuel Muffa Jackson.
Okay, Jeff, it is showtime at the Apollo. Let's see if we can decipher this cinematic masterpiece.
Oh, boy.
Grab your sketch pad. Change your hair color yet again. And remember me. This is the hero's journey of Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Act 1 of the hero's journey begins with the ordinary world, or world of common day, where we meet our main character in their status quo normal life.
Wait. If you have not seen this movie, press stop and find a way to watch this movie. This is one of those films you could have not watched Dragonheart last month and been just fine listening to our episode. This movie demands to be viewed, especially for the first time. This is one of those movies that blows your mind and reinvigorates your excitement about the creativity of the cinematic experience. Go watch this movie. If you've not watched this movie, Mom and Dad, I'm talking to you. Press stop, go to the library and rent the DVD, and then you can continue. Spoiler alert.
Since The Sixth Sense, there has been no movie we have covered that requires watching as much as this one. You will be confused, frustrated, and irritated if you don't watch the movie. Okay. This is a love story, and our lovers are as follows. Joel Barish, played by Jim Carrey, is a deep, lonely man who draws and writes in a journal and has some kind of a job requiring biz casual and an attaché. That's really all we know about him at the beginning of this movie.
Well, he sleeps on a sofa bed, too.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
That's rough. Those are not comfortable.
He does not live large. And he has a crappy, is it a Corolla or a Tercel? Something.
I was going to say it's an old Corolla, but at the time of the movie, it probably wasn't that old.
Yeah, that's
20 years ago.
It's a late 90s Corolla. Clementine Krasinski, no relation to John Krasinski, is a mercurial, seductive Barnes & Noble employee with a drinking problem and poor impulse control.
I like her.
I'm already concerned that there will be deviation in Act 1 because what I identified as the ordinary world is a truncated version of Joel's and Clementine's first time around relationship from meet cute to breakup.
Oh, so God, no, Jeff, no.
Yeah, because originally I had her asking him out essentially as the call to adventure, but that's not where I went. So I have a feeling. I have a feeling this will work better. I can already tell if you start with your call to adventure and then I don't know how to do this.
All right. Well, okay. Here's why we're having such a hard time with this. This film is not told linearly.
Right.
And the things that we are shown at the beginning of the movie are not what really happened, which is why it makes this first segment of the movie such a challenge and why I think that you are including it in the world of common day, even though really up till the credits roll.
Right.
Which is interesting that the credits roll 18 minutes into the film.
Right.
Is why you're including all of that in the world of common day. But I think that is the beginning of the adventure because it's the beginning of the adventure from Joel's mental state, not unraveling the entire story and reconceptualizing it as a straight line and then deciding, okay, so stuff that happens in 20 minutes into the film is the call to adventure.
I think we'll resync up here again. It's really going to hinge on the call to adventure. But why don't we switch? Well, I don't know.
All right, well, here's the first thing we need to identify. The movie starts as we meet Joel, and as he wakes up in this modest apartment, as we've already identified. It is Valentine's Day 2004. We are recording this episode on Valentine's Day 2024, so exactly 20 years after the events of this movie take place, or at least the start. So anyway, I had that highlighted because I wanted to make sure I said it.
Or are we in your memory of having recorded this?
All right, so World of Common Day, much of what you said before you threw us off the train, and Joel he wakes up on his sofa bed, he goes downstairs to go to work, there's a big dent in the side of his car.
Yeah.
He assumes his neighbor did it, he writes a big note that says thank you and sticks it on their windshield wiper, goes to the train station, he's on his way to work, except he cannot explain it to himself, sprints across the platform and jumps onto the train heading to Montauk instead of going on the train that will take him to work.
Right.
He's confused about why he's there. He sits on the snowy beach. It's February in Montauk. It's snowing at the beach. And he's like, yeah, great idea, Joel. February in Montauk. But he's sitting on this snowy beach, writing in his journal sketchbook. He notices a page is ripped out. He's like, oh, I don't remember doing that. And he states, "This appears to be my first entry in 2 years." Now, all of this is innocuous to the viewers. We don't know that we don't know that these are clues to anything yet.
Again,
which is
kind
why
of like the
you
Sixth
need to
Sense.
see the movie the first time. You need to watch this movie so that you're seeing all these things, so that when they're revealed, their meaning is revealed at the end of the movie, your mind too can be blown.
It's like the Sixth Sense in that way, in that all the clues appear to be totally rational parts of a movie.
Yeah.
Until it's revealed what's happening.
And we're starting to hear some of Joel's inner monologue. He's talking about how sand is overrated. It's just tiny little rocks. And then he sees a woman in a bright orange hoodie walking down the beach toward him. And he says that he wishes he could meet someone new, but that's not going to happen because he can't make eye contact with a woman he doesn't know.
Right.
That was my world of common day.
Okay.
That sets up Joel's personal life and his mental state. Done.
So let me pick up from where you left off and try to see if I can identify your call to adventure. That'll be fun. Which one other detail, before he leaves the beach, he kind of goes up to this old house right on the beach and is kind of looking in the windows. He's curious about what's in that house. And then we cut to later, he's sitting in a diner, drinking coffee and writing in his journal when he spots that same girl with the orange sweatshirt pouring Bombay Sapphire gin into her coffee under the table. Always a green flag. And she makes eye contact, and then he looks away.
Yeah.
And then at the train station, she tries to get his attention. She's like waving to him and like pursuing him, but he's too shy. And then finally on the train, she switches seats to be right in front of him, and he can no longer deny or fail to react to her. And so she's coaxing him into conversation, and they seem familiar to each other. Another clue. And Clementine says, "Do you ever go to Barnes & Noble?" "Oh, that's probably how we know because I work there."
She doesn't seem familiar to him. I disagree with that.
I read into one of his
he says, "I think I would remember that hair," because her hair is like bright blue. Well, not bright blue. It's kind of like a muddy blue, actually. But,
Blue ruin.
But she says, "I change my hair color a lot, so that's why you probably don't recognize me."
See, there's a look that he gives that makes me think he's not being entirely honest, and that it's more of his pushing her away. But it's not in the script, so I'm not gonna. That's not the hill I'm gonna die on. I'm probably gonna die on a hill, but it's not that hill. Okay, so again, he dismisses her and says, "Oh, I'm working. I should probably," and then he pushes her away. So, but then, as he's driving home from the train station, so I'm gonna say, well, we're getting there. So as he's driving home from the train station, he spots her, offers her a ride, and he goes to her apartment where he thinks he's going to drop her off, but she says, "Come in for a drink." And she's awkwardly trying to seduce him, and he's pushing her away. And as he's leaving, she writes her phone number on his hand and says, "Call me." I'm going to say that's your call to adventure. Am I close?
No.
Your call to adventure is him hitting on her in the train, or her hitting him? What's your call?
Why don't you finish your world of common day, and then I will present the call to adventure?
No, because
I'm
our
standard procedure here.
I have 3 more bullet points, and then the bullet point says, "Am I in your ordeal yet?"
Okay. Oh dear. Okay. All right. Next segment is call to adventure. The hero is presented with a challenge which renders him unable to continue living in the comfort of the ordinary world. So we've established Joel's ordinary world as the kind of guy he is. Now, this girl that he keeps seeing in Montauk approaches him very aggressively on the train. That is the challenge which renders him unable to continue living in the comfort of the ordinary world. She inserts herself into his life. That's the call to adventure.
Why don't you just go ahead and proceed with your analysis, and if I have anything to say, I'll jump in.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, I just wanted to say, the introduction of Clementine, the spirit of the introduction, not necessarily the context of like her being a nut, reminds me so much of my first interactions with my now wife, Michelle, when we first met.
Oh, like how so?
I was like, well, like I said, I was like Joel, shy, incapable of speaking to women. Michelle is like Clementine. She's outgoing. She's snarky. She started talking to me in class. And just like how Clementine introduces herself and references a song, "Oh, My Darling Clementine," so too did Michelle when she referenced the Beatles song. Michelle colors her hair, too. In the 25 years I've known her, I've never seen her with her natural hair color. Anyway, there's so many elements of, aside from the insanity of Clementine, there's so many elements of Clementine that remind me of my wife.
Oh, wow. That must make this movie even more special for you to watch.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Whereas for me, also, it was like, yeah.
I was say Kate Winslet is Michelle's favorite actress. So she absolutely loves this movie.
That's so funny because when I watch this movie, it moves me so deeply. But part of it for me is reliving the horror of some bad relationships I had that were like so deep and meaningful, but so toxic and not being able to get out of them like a bear trap. And so when we get to the ending of this movie, it's terrifying and sweet at once, which I think is, I think that's how Kaufman intended it.
I was going to also say that when Clementine says, don't make any jokes about my name, like the song Huckleberry and Huckleberry Hound, Joel has no knowledge of what she's talking about. He's never heard the song and he doesn't know what Huckleberry Hound is. And she's like, are you insane? How do you not know what these are? And she sings the song to him. He has no clue, which is meant to put us off because how many people our age and older absolutely know that song and absolutely know Huckleberry Hound. So for him to not know, it's off-putting. We're like, what? Who is this guy? How does he not know? Okay, so
jeez.
That was my call to adventure. So you just want me to roll on to refusal?
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll match up. I don't even think we're going to match up on Elixir, to be honest. Okay. I think my analysis is just completely different than yours.
Refusal of the call. Confronted with fear of the unknown, the call to adventure is refused either directly by the hero or sometimes external forces push the hero back. My refusal was Joel's initial feelings about Clementine. She's being very forward with him on the train. He says, you know what, I'm kind of writing here. I'd like to get back to that. When he goes up to her apartment, she's very forward again with her quirky seduction. And he says, I really should go. And she says, no, you should stay. And he insists on leaving.
Yeah, that's what I would put too. And again, the analysis you are laying out totally makes sense. And it's where I went first. But then I made a decision, and maybe it was just me being like Clementine.
I also felt the refusal of Joel feeling like he needs to get up and leave. And here's where it might connect to where you're going is, oh boy, I feel so bad for anybody who's decided to listen to this without watching the movie first. Because what I'm about to say makes no sense at all otherwise. So what we learn later is this is not really the first meeting of Joel and Clementine. They already met 2 years prior at a beach party at that Montauk beach.
Right.
They sat on the stairs in front of that house that you mentioned Joel explores in that first time that we see him. And they have an interaction there. And this is the first time that they've really met. And again, Joel leaves. That is a second refusal of the call from Joel. And it is mirrored in Joel fleeing Clementine's apartment here the first time that we see them. The first time that we, the viewers, think that this is Joel and Clementine's first meeting. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it's interesting because the first meeting we see is not their true first meeting, but the subsequent part of their relationship pretty functionally does proceed backwards. And then at the end, we get their real first meeting. So it is very confusing because we don't know what's happening now unless you track her hair color, which actually is a clue to the timeline.
The next segment is meeting with the mentor. The hero receives counsel on how to operate in the special world. Here's where I had a really tough time because there wasn't really much mentorship for Joel in the timeline I'm following.
Mm-hmm.
There is a moment when Clementine criticizes Joel for being so quiet. And he says that he's sorry, he doesn't really know what to say, his life's uninteresting. He says, you should read my journal, it's just blank.
Really? Does that make you sad? Or anxious? I mean, I'm always anxious thinking I'm not living my life to the fullest, taking advantage of every possibility, making sure I'm not wasting 1 second of the little time I have.
That is an insight into Clementine's mentality and what might excite Joel. And this spirit of grabbing life by the yarbles burrows into Joel, and I think may be part of what governs his actions for the rest of the movie. He's a shy, reserved, quiet, socially awkward guy, but he pursues this wild, quirky, bigger-than-life personality woman.
I think that's fair. I think in a romantic story, the lovers can be mentors to each other. I think in a traditional rom-com, it's usually the best friend who says, you shouldn't go out with that guy, or you've got to, have courage and go. But in some movies, I agree that the lovers can be mentors to one another. So I think that's a cool insight. Let me just offer my perspective without us having to argue about it, because I want to acknowledge the total validity of the way you're analyzing this movie, but just hear me out a little bit.
Of course.
At the end of the movie, we see the real first meeting between Joel and Clementine, right? She sees him sitting alone on the stairs. He's, eating his barbecue far away from where the party's happening. And she approaches him. In that meeting, he's still shy and he's still awkward, but he is way more competent than he is at their second first meeting. Because he just constantly won't even speak to her in the beginning of the film when we see their fake first meeting that's actually their second time around. And I think his ultimate awkwardness and shyness in that beginning is affected because of the fact that she's uncannily familiar and he is supposed to have erased all memory of her, and there's something wrong. She represents a hole in his memory, and it's uncanny for him. Because in that first scene, he says some charming things. He makes the joke about her name, which is a totally typical thing that a dude would do, right? He makes the Huckleberry Hound joke. And then he says, I think your name is magical. So I think he's less shy in the real timeline, and that part of his shyness and his standoffishness from her is because some part of him is activated by their past, even though it's been erased. So I just kind of wanted to put a flag in that. Where were we?
I believe we are at crossing the first threshold, unless you're done with, if you're done with Mentor.
When we get to your ordeal, I'll tell you why that's my call to adventure.
Great.
But I think you should continue forward, and I'll sort of commentate, I guess.
All right, so let's wrap up Act 1 with crossing the first threshold. The hero must pass a barrier to enter the special world. This crossing represents the hero's commitment to taking on the adventure. So after what we think is the first time these two have met, she has taken him up to her apartment for a drink. He leaves. She writes her name, her number on the back of his hand and says, call me. He goes home. He stalls a bit, drums his fingers on the arm of his chair, and he's nervous, but then he does call her.
What took you so long?
I just walked in.
You miss me?
Oddly enough, I do.
You said I do. I guess that means we're married.
I guess so.
We have to acknowledge, I would like to acknowledge Jim Carrey I think this is the first movie I saw him in where I really bought him as a dramatic actor. You see a little bit of the goofy stuff from him in the scene where he's his 4-year-old self, which is totally motivated because he's part 4-year-old.
Right.
But it was, he's a lot like Robin Williams in that there's something desperate and frantic about him. And when you don't let him be big, he's so compelling to watch.
Yeah.
Because you just see the restraint and all this stuff inside that won't come out. And I think that's perfect casting for Joel Barish.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's take a break and discuss some side quests before we dive into Act 1.
Okay.
Dan, thanks for joining me at the Campbell Cafe. Having finished discussing only the ordinary world of this film, we're going to change it up and have some side quests. I did want to say I got up at 5 a.m. this morning because my wife has COVID, and so the morning routine with me and the kids was all me, and I had a couple errands I had to run before the podcast. So normally on recording day, I get up, if it's a movie like this, and I second guess everything. and change my analysis. So I didn't have time. So I'm wondering if that's part of what's at work here is my morning was so busy that I failed to overthink it and underthought it instead.
But you said that you overthought it already. You said you did your first analysis the same way I'm doing mine, and then you had a change of heart.
I'm just saying
rewrote it.
I'm just saying I probably would have changed it back this morning. Now listening to you, but whatever. It's an interesting.
You preemptively.
I undouble did it, but that's not what we're here for. We're here to discuss our side quests. Dan, what entertainment and art have you consumed in the past month?
I watched the Michael Mann film Ferrari.
Ooh.
Which is Oscar nominated this year.
Did it go by fast?
And I was disappointed. I was disappointed.
Oh, no.
It would have been better as an Italian film with Italian actors speaking Italian. It just took me out of the film to see Adam Driver doing this Italian accent. Penelope Cruz was great.
Oh.
Strangely not nominated for her performance. I've very much expected it after watching the movie. It's called Ferrari, so of course there's a car race. That sequence was cool. That was act 3 of the movie, was this like cross-country car race.
Nice.
That was neat, except for kind of a pretty bad CGI moment.
Oh, no.
That took me out of it. Shailene Woodley, fine actress. Don't know why she was in the movie as the Italian mistress. Could you not have found an Italian actress to play that role? It did not need to be Shailene Woodley. I wanted to love it. I dig Michael Mann.
Yeah.
I thought that biopics, like I loved Ford versus Ferrari. That was great.
Yeah,
and I thought this would be like an
too.
interesting, because that was from the Ford perspective.
Right.
And I thought this would be interesting to see it from Ferrari's perspective.
Like Ferrari
And it would be
versus
a cool,
Ford.
It would be a cool bookend. And
no.
oh man, I was just really disappointed. Nobody was bad. Patrick Dempsey is in it as an
He's the least Italian person I've ever known.
What? And he was fine, but what?
Well, it's not like we have a great stash of Italian American actors in this country.
Certainly not.
We don't have no epic stars or anything. Okay.
And this one just didn't do it for me. I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts if you see it. Although now that lowered your expectations considerably. You might go in butthurt and
for the
just
most
continue
part,
to be butthurt throughout the movie.
For the most part, I very much trust your call. And yeah, now that I've heard your take, that's all I would focus on watching the movie. So you pretty much ruined it for me. But
great.
I listened to the audiobook of John Scalzi's latest novel, Starter Villain, read by Will Wheaton, who does, I love his audiobook narrations.
Yep.
It's about a divorced substitute teacher down on his luck, and his estranged uncle, with whom he has no relationship, dies and leaves him his supervillain business, including
oh my god,
including sentient talking cats and a volcano lair.
What?
Now, it's
like Ready Player One, but from the bad guy's perspective.
It definitely has some things in common. So it's not as farcical as it sounds, but it is, and it's not a deep emotional book. It's got some action and tension, but mostly it's just really funny and charming. It was exactly what I needed. So if you are in the mood for a really clever, funny, unusual book, I highly recommend Starter Villain by John Scalzi. Now he's sort of more known for science fiction and like
the Old Man's War saga is what I know him for.
I'd only listened to a shorts or a novella of his before. I knew what he was famous for, but when I saw the book cover is this noble photograph of a noble looking cat looking at the camera and the name Starter Villain, I was like, I'm in. I'm 100% in. So highly recommend it.
Do you think that, let me rephrase the question. I haven't even asked it yet. Let me rephrase it in my head before I ask it. How much of your enjoyment of the book do you think was Will Wheaton's performance versus the content of the novel itself?
I think the content certainly would have stood alone. It's a first-person book. There are sarcastic comments that he really he brought to life. I could tell what was italicized. I could tell the punctuation. The character, as it is on the page, came more to life. But I think it was probably there on the page.
Okay, great. Yeah, his performance of Ready Player One and Ready Player Two I could just listen to those forever.
I've listened to them multiple times for that reason. Yeah,
I think he's fantastic.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, good job, Will Wheaton.
Amen.
Way to be.
All right, well, let's head back to Studios G&Z and tromp our way through this crazy movie.
The Road of Trials is, according to our production template, is my segment, but I pretty much did all of Act 1 with you chiming in as needed. Do you want to continue that, or do you think you want to take over with Road of Trials?
Where did you leave off?
Well, my crossing of the threshold was Joel calling Clementine after their first meeting.
Right.
What the viewer thinks is their first meeting.
So I'm still in Ordinary World. Like I said at the top.
All this is Ordinary World for you. Okay.
The first time around of their relationship I saw as Ordinary World. So
okay, so maybe I'll just continue with Road of Trials.
When you get to where I'm at, I'll chime in. How about that?
All right. Tests allies and enemies. Having crossed the first threshold, the hero meets allies, makes enemies, and must pass a series of tests to prove their worthiness. I only saw 2 as close to the word ally as I could find, and that was Rob and Carrie.
Yeah.
Joel's friends.
Yeah. They stand up for him. They're on his side.
They are the married couple that take Joel to the beach party where Joel really meets Clementine for the first time before all the mind wiping happens.
Right.
They do their best to cheer him up and to talk him through it once the relationship starts to go sour.
God, Rob, give it a rest.
It's okay.
Carrie, I am making a birdhouse.
Rob's solution is to offer a joint. Carrie's suggestion is take this as a sign and make a clean break. Like, she's the one offering actual advice that might be helpful to Joel, but really everybody else. Okay, no. Enemies.
Yes.
Patrick.
Oh, God.
Patrick is an enemy from the very start. He's conniving. He's a heart thief. We will get into that. Everybody else I saw as a shapeshifter.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of what makes this movie so complex and confusing is you really don't know what to feel about anybody by the time it's over.
Yeah.
You've changed, you know.
All of the other supporting characters in this movie, Tom Wilkinson plays Dr. Wierzwiak, who owns and runs Lacuna Incorporated. This is a company that we will find out in a bit provides services to remove someone from your memory. Mary is the front desk receptionist, played by Kirsten Dunst. The 2 mind wipe technicians are Stan, played by a very young Mark Ruffalo,
Yeah.
and Elijah Wood. And that's pretty much it for the characters. Like, everybody, they're all shapeshifters, mostly because they work for this company. Aside from Patrick, who really does have nefarious intent, the others are just doing that. They think they're providing a valuable service for people. You've gone through a horrible breakup, or there's one person sitting in the waiting room who's got a cardboard box full of dog toys and memorabilia. This person wants Buster out of their memory because it's too painful to live with the death of Buster. And so they've come there to have Buster removed from their memory. And that's a service that these people provide, but it causes all of the problems.
Yeah.
All right, so test 1. I thought the first test was the night picnic on the frozen Charles River. Joel is timid, nervous. Clementine is playful. He doesn't impress her with his bravery and or recklessness, but after he drives her home, she asks, "Can I sleep in your place instead?" So I see that as a win. Whatever affection she has available to give to people, he has earned it.
Okay.
So she said, I'm just going to run upstairs and get my toothbrush. And while she's gone, an unknown character we've not met yet, but if you've seen the Lord of the Rings trilogy, the end of which landed in theaters the year before this movie did, you recognize Elijah Wood, except his hair is the exact opposite of the Frodo mop top.
Yeah.
He's got a Bobby Hill haircut now. But he looks upset. His eyes are like big. Well, Elijah Wood's eyes are big and round anyway, but they're big and round. They look kind of red around the edges. They're misty. He looks maybe like he's been crying, but he knocks on Joel's window.
Yes?
Can I help you?
What do you mean?
Can I help you with something? What are you doing here?
I'm not really sure what you're asking me.
Oh. Thanks.
So one of those odd moments that is inserted into the first 20 minutes of this film that make the viewer go, what?
Yeah.
What is actually going on right now?
Yeah. And great casting because we love Elijah Wood. He's an innocent hero. So to put him in this role does two things. One, it makes him very memorable so that when Patrick shows up again, you remember that dude being there for 30 seconds, which I think is important. If this had been kind of an unknown actor with everything that's going on, he might not have stuck in your head like Elijah Wood does. And then the other thing is that he's like everyone else in this movie, he's playing against type, right? So far against type. He's Frodo. He's a hero. He's not a conniving, pathetic bad guy.
Test number 2, the opening credits roll. After Elijah Wood walks away, we don't see Clementine get back in the car. It fades to black. And then we fade back up. It's nighttime. Joel is driving in the rain, sobbing. Something has clearly gone terribly wrong.
Right.
And he's pounding his fist on the steering wheel as he drives. He throws a cassette tape out the window. And if you're paying attention, you'll notice an ink spot on Joel's temple that hasn't been there before. So keep that in mind for later.
Another clue.
So Joel drives home, parks in his parking spot, and as he's walking from his parking spot to his apartment, a van, like an unmarked beater van, slows down next to him. And we hear 2 men in the van. We don't see who they are, but we hear them saying, "Is that him?" "Yeah, that's him." And then one of them waves at Joel through the window and laughs. This interaction is the first of many moments that exemplify just how terribly unprofessional the employees of this company are.
Mirswiak clearly can't find anyone legitimate who wants to do this kind of work.
Right. So Joel runs into a neighbor in the mailroom. This neighbor, Frank, asks if he's got any Valentine's Day plans with Clementine. And then Joel notices that Frank has received an envelope from Lacuna Inc. Now, we don't know what that is yet, but the camera focuses on it, so we're meant to pay attention to that name. Later on, we see one of these envelopes. Should I talk about that yet?
Why not? This is all out of,
Okay, it's all out of order? Okay, fine. Yeah. So later on, when Joel is commiserating with Rob and Carrie about how the relationship is falling apart, Rob pulls out an envelope, much to Carrie's protest, pulls out one of these Lacuna Inc. envelopes and pulls out a card that's in it that says, "Clementine Krasinski has had Joel Barish erased from her memory. Please refrain from mentioning their relationship to her again."
Right.
So you know that Frank is receiving a letter from Lacuna saying that Joel is having Clementine erased from his memory, and please don't mention Clementine to him again.
Right.
But he just hasn't opened it yet. So Joel goes upstairs. He puts on these pajamas that are wrapped in plastic. Lacuna has provided these pajamas to him. They're brand new.
1960s pajamas, the classic with the lapels and the buttons.
Collared, yeah. He puts those on. He takes a pill and then stumbles around his apartment. This is a very fast-acting pill, apparently. Stumbles around his apartment, turning off lights.
Right.
And when the light goes off, that triggers the 2 guys in the van. We hear Elijah Wood say, "Well, showtime at the Apollo." So they then grab a bunch of equipment from their van. One of them's got this helmet that looks like the contraption that Egon puts on Rick Moranis in Ghostbusters. And they go into Joel's apartment. And we still don't know what any of this means yet, if this is the first time you're watching this movie.
Yeah, it's very confusing and surreal. And you have the feeling that you've missed something. Because it's all, there are movies you watch where the direction is sort of bad, and so it's hard to follow the story. But with this, everything is so particular and clean and intentional that when I was watching this for the first time, I thought I must have missed some scene or ignored some important detail because I'm seeing all this stuff that makes no sense. Then you go, oh, this is a Kaufman movie, if you know the screenwriter. And then you go, oh, okay, maybe it'll all come clear at some point.
That's true. If you've seen Being John Malkovich, if you've seen Adaptation, you know that this writer has very wild ideas.
This is not a David Koepp film. You're not,
All right, and it's about to get worse because now we begin to see a distorted memory of Joel's conversation with Frank that he just had, but the audio's fuzzy, the image is out of focus. We as the viewer are beginning to be very confused if we weren't already.
Okay, hold on, because you've caught up with me, and I want to take it for the next couple of points, if that's all right.
Okay.
Everything you've just described is in my world of common day. My take on this is that because we begin the film, and I obviously, as you're watching this film, you're seeing it out of order. When we begin the film, Joel has already gone through the whole relationship with Clementine and broken up. All of that is pre-existing information for our main character, Joel. We don't know it as an audience, and Joel doesn't know it because it's been erased. Joel's journey here is going back into his memory and figuring out what's wrong. It's essentially a mystery of him unraveling what has happened. So my call to adventure is what you're about to say, which is he gets to Robin Carey's house. He has a flashback of visiting Clementine at the Barnes & Noble to give her an early Valentine's Day gift, and she acts as if she doesn't remember him. He's describing this to Robin Carey as though this was like such a power play by Clementine to totally pretend to not know who he is, and then she leans over and kisses somebody who's hidden behind a book rack. We find out later that it's Patrick, but we can't see his face. And he's talking, this is the last time he's seen her before he gets to Robin Carey's house to just say, this is what's happening. And this is when Rob, ignoring adamant protests by Carey, pulls out this card and hands it to Joel. And this card is, like you described, says, Clementine Krasinski has had Joel Barish erased from her memory. Please don't mention their relationship ever again. For me, that is the thing that drives the story forward, where a breakup is something that can happen, and that's normal. And like I said, the whole relationship to me is a pre-existing condition of the film. But this is the weirdest, undeniable, world-changing, life-shaking thing, because this is like presenting you with something that takes you out of the ordinary world. If the ordinary world is the relationship, now he's not even on the planet Earth. What, people can have their memories erased? This completely turns. So for me, that was the call to adventure.
And what really is going to cook your noodle is that as Joel is looking at this card, the name Clementine Krasinski vanishes from the card.
Yeah, this is where it starts to get weird for the audience, too, because this is where we're discovering what's actually happening.
Yeah.
So that brings us to refusal of the... So tell me why you think the next thing is your thing, and then I'll justify mine.
Well, okay, so I thought that the last test was Joel going to Lacuna to talk to the doctor, finding out what Lacuna does.
Our files are confidential, Mr. Barish, so I can't show you evidence. Suffice it to say that Miss Krasinski was not happy, and she wanted to move on. We provide that possibility.
Miss Krasinski was not happy and wanted to move on. We provide that possibility.
Later, Joel returns to Lacuna and demands to have the treatment as well.
So let me jump in here. I have this as refusal of the call. So Joel's been told memory erasure is something that can happen. Oh, so you had talked about the incompetence of the employees. So Mary, the receptionist, greets Joel when he comes to the desk, wards him off with the medical form. There's no bigger refusal from without than someone stopping you with the medical form. And then he's taking her, she's leading him back in the office, and Mark Ruffalo jumps out and does a jump scare on her in a medical office. It's just like, oh my God.
So unprofessional.
So then, as you mentioned, he sits down with Dr. Howard Mierzwiak, Tom Wilkinson, who says, you shouldn't have seen this. So we have some refusal from within because Joel says this is a hoax, right? He's denying not only that erasure is the thing, but that Clementine would have him erased. And then he tells Carrie, I'm the nicest guy she ever went out with. So he's discrediting her reason. So this next part for me is meeting with the mentor. He goes back to Carrie, and Carrie says, you know how Clementine is. She's impulsive. Again, like you said, she's trying to guide Joel into how things really are, get him in touch with reality.
Yeah.
And then you started to touch on this before I waved my flag at you, which is he barges back into Lacuna and demands to have his own memory erased. And this is where Mierzwiak sits down and tells him, here's how the special world of memory erasure works. You're going to go home, you're going to collect everything that could remind you of Clementine, photos, clothing, gifts, books, compact discs, journal entries. Empty your home, bring us all this stuff, and we're going to make a map of your brain. And then when you go home tonight, we're going to erase your memories while you sleep, and you'll wake up with your new life. He's literally laying out, here's the landscape of this special world. And then Joel brings all that stuff to Lacuna and records himself on tape, unloading his memories of Clementine and telling them about their first meeting, which is on the beach at Montauk, but not as we saw at the top of the film.
Right.
It's at a party thrown by Rob and Carrie on that same beach. So Mierzwiak says, and again, he's telling the audience how this is going to work. And I still didn't get it the first time I watched the movie. He says, we're going to start with your most recent memory and work backwards. Hey, audience, what you're about to see is happening backwards. But I'm still like, what is happening here? And then he explains, and I love science fiction like this, when it's like, here's how the magic works. Don't think too hard about it. He says, there's an emotional core to every memory, and when you eradicate it, it starts its degradation, and by the time you wake up, all the memories we've targeted have disappeared, like a dream upon waking. That's all the explanation we get about how memory erasing works, because it's not the point of the movie. The movie is not about the science of memory erasure. It's about the emotional journey.
Right.
So that, to me, was meeting with the mentor.
And I like Joel saying, is there any risk of brain damage?
Yes.
Well, technically speaking, the procedure is brain damage, but it's on a par with a night of heavy drinking. Nothing you'll miss.
Yeah, that was a comic moment played straight, making it even more disturbing.
Okay, so concluding the road of trials from my perspective, Joel is still at the clinic, having everything prepared. He's brought all of the memorabilia. Now he sits in this brain scan chair, and we watch as Stan draws these little ink spots on the side of Joel's head. So that's the ink spot you see as he's driving in the rain, sobbing.
Right.
He then guides Joel really through all of these different pieces of memorabilia. He says, don't talk about it, just experience the emotion. That'll help me map the location of the memory in your brain, and then later tonight I'll come over to your place after you've gone to sleep and I'll delete all of these memories for you. We then cut back and forth, we sort of flash forward a bit to Joel lying on his bed with this contraption on his head, and we're hearing Stan and Patrick setting up the equipment, and then back to Joel in the clinic sitting in the chair, and he's hearing what Patrick and Stan are saying, but they're kind of these echoey voices. This is the beginning of the procedure going wrong in Joel's head, and how much more of an inmost cave can one have aside from being inside your own head.
What you just described to me is my crossing of the threshold, because Joel is entering the special world of his memory.
I can understand.
When he sits in the chair and starts unpacking all the artifacts, so they start making a map of his brain. They're giving him these objects. He's looking at them. His brain is reacting. And then Mark Ruffalo is sitting there with the screen going, aha, that brain activity, that's this memory. And that brain activity, that's that memory. And then Like you said, next thing we know, he's lying in his bed with a colander helmet. The sequence you just described of him having that weird experience, my take on that wasn't that things were going wrong so much as he's experienced. So obviously they have to erase his memory of having his memory erased if they're going to properly remove Clementine, right? So this is just the most recent memory and they're erasing it. And this is the only time in the movie where we see what it's like to be in your head as your memories are erased. And it's like a weird nightmare where everything that's happening doesn't make sense. And you're somehow receiving input from the outside world, but you're also in your own memory. At one point, he says to Tom Wilkinson that, this is weird. Is this happening now? And Tom Wilkinson says, yeah, this is about how it would go. It's a crazy, surreal moment as they're erasing the memory of him having his memory erased. This is a cool.
The reason I thought the procedure was going wrong is because in this memory, Joel is hearing Patrick and Stan and what they are saying while they are working on Joel in his apartment. He's not supposed to be aware of what they're doing. We even hear later on, Mary says something like, oh, are we able to wake him up? And they're like, no, he's out, dead to the world.
Well, it's interesting that you say that. In any successful procedure, the person's memory of having their memory erased would be erased. So you can't ever really know what it was like to experience having your memory erased. So I didn't picture that anything was ever going wrong during this procedure because it's successful. We don't know that people don't know that they're having their memory erased while it happens. They just wake up and their memory is erased. But remember, this isn't the only memory procedure where someone remembers who goes back to the person that they were with. It happens with Mary and Mierzwiak. So my understanding of this is that this is just how it's happening and that really it's Joel fighting it that's the weird thing. But even that could be something normal because we've seen at least one other example of that person reliving that same experience. So until someone tells them, hey, your memory was erased. Because until Rob and Carrie say, hey, look, this is what happened, he doesn't know. He's just experiencing that magnetism of going back to that same person, the same way Mary does with Mierzwiak.
Okay, the ordeal.
This whole episode is the ordeal.
The hero faces the ultimate test, often risking death to overcome his worst fear, sometimes actually appearing to die. We, the viewer, are watching Joel experience memories as they are being deleted.
Yeah.
It's a bizarre experience. Oh, wait, not the ordeal. We're on the approach to the inmost cave.
Oh, right. Yes. Erase your memory of having heard that, listeners.
Approach to the inmost cave, where the hero reaches the edge of a dangerous place where the object of their quest is hidden. Joel recalls the last time he saw Clementine. She came home late, drunk. She says, I sort of wrecked your car. They have an argument. She walks out. He chases after her, but something's not right in this memory. She keeps teleporting around. A car falls from the sky. As he's chasing her down the street, every time he turns around, the view is a mirror image of what he was just looking at. The street and store signs are backwards. The dent on his car is on the right side instead of the left. Words on signs start disappearing entirely because of the memories being erased.
So that's such a great way to visually show that happening.
And how confusing it must be, yeah.
Because, I mean, even think about how your memories sort of fade over time. Those little details, it's not that you get them wrong. It's just that they're not there anymore. It's hazy and the signs are, you don't remember the signs from that. It's great.
And while Joel is stumbling along the street after Clementine, he's hearing Patrick and Stan arguing, and their voices are projected as if through loudspeakers this time. Before, they were fuzzy, muddy, unclear. Now they're being projected as these two are arguing. And what they're arguing about is Stan has told Patrick that Mary is going to be coming over tonight as well. And Patrick says that, oh, maybe I'll invite my new girlfriend. By the way, my new girlfriend is Clementine.
Oh.
And Stan's like, that's this Clementine. You dated her? And oh yeah, and I stole her panties too.
What a creep.
And you're like, Patrick, what a nut. Okay, so, and Stan is suitably outraged, but then they both start laughing. So, okay, Stan's integrity has limits.
Elijah Wood's cackle in that scene is outrageous.
So what this means is that after they wiped Joel from Clementine's memory, Patrick went to Clementine's Barnes & Noble and asked her out.
Yeah.
That is the guy Joel saw her kiss in the bookstore when he went there to try to give her a Valentine's Day present.
And ostensibly, he knows everything about her and what she didn't like about Joel, and he's using that to his advantage.
Right.
And now he's going to be armed with all Joel's memories of her and all the things he did right.
Exactly. So now we see a memory of Joel and Clementine. They're in a flea market. She says she wants a baby. Joel asks if she's really ready to take care of one. This enrages her. They have a screaming fight in the middle of the street.
Amateur move, dude. Amateur move. You do not say that to a woman who just said, I want to have a baby. Oh, God.
Mary shows up at the apartment now, ransacks Joel's cupboards, steals his whiskey. Pours whiskey for her and Stan. Not for Patrick, though. Oh, you didn't want one, did you? Now we're seeing a memory of Joel and Clementine in a restaurant. Joel's afraid that they're one of those sad couples that everybody makes fun of.
Mm-hmm.
While Joel's in the memory, he hears Patrick call Clementine on the phone.
That's so weird.
And call her Tangerine, a nickname that Joel gave to Clementine after she colored her hair orange. And he's like, how did he know to call you that? Now, Clementine's having some kind of a breakdown because she, having had the procedure a few days ago, something's weird. She realizes that something's not right, and she's starting to freak out. So Patrick leaves to go and take care of her. Meanwhile, Stan and Mary are smoking a joint, lying on opposite sides of Joel in Joel's bed. They've got like a plate of food on his stomach. There's a bottle of beer shoved between his crotch.
There's like a Weekend at Bernie's vibe almost here.
Yeah. So back at Clementine's apartment now, this is all happening very quickly. Fast little scenes. Clementine's freaking out. She says, I have to go to the Charles River now. Patrick digs into his backpack, which is full of all of the Clementine memorabilia that Joel brought to Lacuna, trusting that they were going to destroy it as they said they would. But no, as you alluded to a few minutes ago, Patrick is using this stuff to try to woo Clementine. Journal entries, poems that Joel has written, things that Joel said to Clementine that Clementine thought were romantic and sweet.
Yeah.
He is now, the two of them are lying now on the ice at the Charles River, the same way Joel and Clementine did. And now Patrick says, the same thing that Joel did. I could die now. I've never been so happy. And Clementine, this does not work on Clementine. She sits upright. I need to go home now.
Yeah.
Patrick, the idiot, doesn't. You're supposed to destroy memories, not bring them back. And that's exactly what Patrick is doing.
Yeah. By
using Joel's words on Clementine. Because now Clementine's she's starting to remember. She doesn't know what's happening to her. Oh, it's such a mind F.
Yeah.
This movie, for them and for us as viewers.
Yeah, I agree.
So Patrick beginning to trigger memories in Clementine that should have been deleted. That's what I saw as the end of the approach to the Inmost Cave. Because again, it's all starting to fall apart.
So your approach and my approach are about to end at the same time.
Okay.
I had one more bullet point that might be in your ordeal, so I don't want to
go for it.
I don't want to say it because what if that's your whole ordeal? But I guess that would be like my experience of this whole podcast.
That's what you've been doing this entire episode.
So the last part of approach to me is the beautiful setup to why the next part is so heartbreaking, which is we're back in Joel's memory, and we've seen. I don't know, I'm getting emotional. We've seen so many bad, terrible memories. We're finally getting to the precious ones, to the reasons why Joel does what he does next. So they're in bed and Clementine says, am I ugly? Which is such a vulnerable, intimate thing for someone like Clementine to say. She has built her whole personality around protecting herself from these kinds of thoughts and feelings. And so when she asks him, she is bearing her soul. She is revealing her darkest fear. And she tells him this story of this ugly doll she had, which she called Clementine. How messed up is that? and how she used to yell at her, "You can't be ugly, be pretty." And she says it was as if I could transform her, that I would magically change too. And he just starts kissing her everywhere and saying, "You're pretty, you're pretty." And she says, "Jolie, don't ever leave me." By the way, she calls him Jolie because his name's Joel, but Jolie in French means pretty. I thought that was a nice little parallel there. It's a nice little Easter egg. And Joel says, not to her, but to himself or to Mierzwiak, "Mierzwiak, please let me keep this memory." And then the next thing they do is they literally walk out onto thin ice. So I saw those things as a great funnel into the ordeal, because this is where he's finally at the breaking point where I want to keep my memories. Until now, he's really just been in a whirlwind of experiencing these things happening backward, but this memory is the one where he says, I want to keep my memories. And then I loved the symbolism of them walking onto thin ice. So that's where I drew approach.
The ordeal. The hero faces the ultimate test, often risking death to overcome his worst fear, sometimes actually appearing to die. Joel has reached the memories that he doesn't want to lose. He screams at the sky that he wants to cancel the procedure. And there are these two interesting images of, one of them is that memory that you were just talking about, where they're in bed talking about Clementine's fear, and then she just gets sucked away.
Oh,
she just vanishes into the covers.
Yeah, they're like on the ice, and then they're on the floor in Grand Central Station, and it's very disorienting. And then she's, like you said, she just gets pulled away.
We cut back to Joel's apartment. Stan and Mary are now dancing on Joel's bed while Joel is in the bed, having his memory erased, in their underwear.
They're terrible people.
Drinking his whiskey, smoking marijuana is in his apartment. I absolutely hate the smell of marijuana. And I have so many neighbors around me, the people below me, the people across the way, they're all potheads. And I've just got the smell of pot in my life all the time. And it enrages me to an unreasonable degree.
And so
when I see these two MFers dancing on this guy's bed, drinking his whiskey and smoking pot in the dude's apartment, that stuff is gonna just sit, and he's gonna wake up. That should have been the first part of the movie. When he wakes up, he should have wrinkled his nose. Like, what am I smelling? That should have been the first part of the movie.
Deep breaths, deep breaths. You got triggered. It's okay.
Now, Joel begins to drag Clementine through his positive memories of her to get back to Dr. Mierzwiak's office to tell him that he doesn't want the procedure anymore.
Yes.
Memory Clementine suggests to Joel,
what if you take me somewhere else? Somewhere where I don't belong. And we hide there till morning.
Man, I can't remember anything without you.
That's very sweet, but try, okay?
Okay.
So Joel begins to remember his childhood, his bicycle, raining, singing "Row, row, row your boat." And then Clementine starts to sing "Row, row, row your boat." They're both lying on his bed at this point. And it begins to rain inside Joel's apartment, mimicking the memory of it raining outside of Joel's childhood home.
Right.
And she's like, it's working, it's working. Then the program stops. The computer beeps. Cut back to Joel's apartment. Stan and Mary are wrapped up in a blanket naked on one of Joel's chairs, and Stan starts freaking out.
He's off the map. He's off the map.
Where?
I don't know where. What do you mean? I don't know where. This is bad. This is very, very bad news. Where are my glasses?
That was the end of the ordeal.
That leads us to reward, the ultimate boon. Having faced their worst fear, the hero seizes the object of their quest. You've just described my reward. Joel and Clementine have temporarily evaded the erasers, and they meet each other in the woods. Joel has dragged her away. He has seized his quest. Remembering her is his quest.
Yep.
And he says, they're trying to erase my memories. And she says, wake up, try waking up. And he does this thing where another slight bit of Jim Carrey goofiness. He pries his eyes open and looks around. And to his surprise, he actually does wake up.
Yeah.
We cut back to not the woods, but now they're, like you said, in his apartment. And Joel recalls a memory of, so he succeeds in bringing her back to this other memory.
Right.
And then we have this amazing, hilarious comedy relief sequence, which is a reward for the audience for having tromped through this terrifying, depressing, disorienting film, in which Clementine appears as Mrs. Hamlin, which is like one of Joel's mother's neighbors or friends or something. And she's in this great 70s dress with the fringe, or maybe it's 60s. And she's smoking. She's like, I love this refrigerator. Look at my dress. And
she's very excited.
So then Jim Carrey is playing his 4-year-old self, and he's under a table, and he's in this weird hybrid of he's kind of a child, but he has sort of has an adult awareness.
Don't cry, baby Joel. Baby Joel, it's okay. Joel, stop it. Look, I think it's working. Look, we're heading, Joel. Look, hey.
They've found a place temporarily where they think the erasers can't get them. So to me, all of that was a reward for Joel facing the fear of losing her and seizing her by the hand, literally, and dragging her away from the erasers.
Yeah, exactly. My reward is Joel succeeds at hiding a memory of Clementine.
Ding, 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 ding.
Wow, we're back in sync at the end of Act 2 here. That was quite an experience.
I love it.
I hope it makes sense for the listeners. I hope we're able to edit this into something comprehensible. Again, that's why we put that disclaimer at the beginning. Watch this movie so that you too understand the twisted nature of the screenplay. And
this is in my top 10 films of all time and has been since the first time I saw it. I've seen this film at least a dozen times, probably more. And so the fact that there's still so much to unravel and unpack is a testament to how complex this movie is and how unconventional the story is. It's also a testament to how the hero's journey is a subjective experience. It is not a formula. It is not a template. You can find these arcs and curves and twists, and they resonate with us because they're part of our human storytelling experience. And this is such a great, I'm so glad that you and I had divergent analyses that are reconverging at the River Charles,
but they still made sense.
Yeah, they're both coherent, right? Like
you said, the hero's journey is not a formula. People were telling stories for thousands of years before Joseph Campbell wrote his book.
Right.
The point of his book is that these stories emerge and evolve in such a similar way. There's something in us as humans that respond to stories that emerge in a particular way.
Absolutely. Well,
I think we've earned a drink.
I need a drink.
Yeah. So let's clasp hands and drag ourselves through our positive memories of each other to the Vogler Lounge, where hopefully some tasty beverages await us.
Dan, we've worked hard. We've found our way back onto the same path, but I'm ready for an alcoholic beverage. Why don't you start? Tell me what you got.
Me start?
Yeah.
Okay. My first inclination, well, you know what? I don't want to say what my first inclination was because it might be what your beverage is and I don't want to ruin it. So I found a sparkling soda, I guess, called Sparkling Clementine, and I'm kind of creating my own cocktail here. So I also have some bourbon because they steal his whiskey.
That's right.
I've got a couple of dashes of Angostura bitters to represent the bitter quality one must have in order to want to erase someone from their memory.
Smart.
A little wedge of Clementine orange here.
I love it.
As a garnish. But before I pour the sparkling soda into the bourbon, I want to taste it by itself to see what it's like. Effervescent. It's like Orange Crush or Sunkissed orange soda. You have a memory of what those taste like? I don't know how long it's been since you've had it. It's been years since I've had one.
I can taste it right now.
Okay, so it's like those, but the orange, it's much less sweet. The orange flavor is more muted. I would actually almost call it more of a natural sweetness than one would get with a soda pop.
There's a French...
like Sunkist or Orange Crush.
There's a very common French orange soda called Orangina or Orangina, and that's what you're describing. It's not super sweet, but it tastes like sparkling orange juice.
Yeah, so I think this might not be as bad as I thought. I was expecting this to be like a sweet pop soda flavor, and it's not that bad. So I don't know what cocktail I'm creating here. I know there's some inspiration of an old-fashioned. There's elements of an old-fashioned with the bitters, and we've got maybe the sweetness of the soda here will be like simple syrup. We'll find out.
Got it.
But, and I have a book called The Bar Book, and I looked to see if there was something that I could make, and I didn't really have anything in that book that would have fit with my ingredients here. So here we have the cocktail now, and I have filled it almost to the top, almost like you would with maybe soda water or tonic water.
Topping it off.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I'm going for here. That's actually not that bad.
Oh, good.
I expected this to be repulsive, but it tastes very similar to an old-fashioned.
Nice.
So 3 cheers for me and my mixology skills.
Well, Dan.
What do you have?
Like our analyses, I think we may have converged on a similar place. I found a cocktail online called Liquid Sunshine.
It sounds like one of the hair colors that Clementine would have.
It is 2 parts whiskey, 3 parts orange juice, and bitters, and it called for half an ounce of simple syrup. But I thought on top of the orange juice, that's going to be a lot of sweetness, so I cut the simple syrup in half, which I usually do when I make an old-fashioned, because I don't like them too sweet.
Okay.
And then an orange wedge. So same thing, it's a whiskey and orange cocktail, but it's just not carbonated. So let's see what it tastes like. It smells like a freshly squoze glass of orange juice.
Squoze, yeah.
Oh, that is delightful.
Oh boy.
That just tastes like
Liquid Sunshine.
Orange juice. And I would expect, if you put vodka in orange juice, you can't taste the vodka until you're done. I expected the whiskey to be more present, but I don't usually drink shaken cocktails. I usually drink like a whiskey on the rocks. Oh, excuse me. Oh, there's the whiskey. Oh, that's delicious. It's almost like a smoothie.
Like a smoothie?
Yeah, it's because I shook it up. So, the orange juice is kind of frothy almost.
Oh, okay.
So that like when you pour yourself, wow, okay.
What's wrong with you?
Listen, I probably have COVID. My wife is upstairs with COVID. So the orange juice is good for your, it's vitamin C, right?
Hey, the previous president recommended injecting sunshine into your body in some way to combat COVID. So that's what you're doing right now.
I feel inoculated.
So I can say this now because it's not what you went with. I looked for when Stan and Patrick are working on Joel.
Mm-hmm.
They have Rolling Rock beer.
Okay.
And Labatt Blue.
Labatt's.
And I looked for those, and I didn't see Labatt. They only had Rolling Rock in 30 bottle cases at my store, and I'm not buying 30 bottles of Rolling Rock for this.
You're not having a college beach party. No.
Not going to do that.
No.
I might have gone for a 12-pack. I was looking for a 6-pack, but they didn't have either of those. So that's okay. So then I decided, okay, let's see if we can make some kind of an orange whiskey cocktail. I had considered using vodka because with the orange soda and the vodka, that basically would have been a screwdriver, just fizzy.
Yeah.
But I thought, you know what? I've got some bourbon. I'll make a Frankenstein version of an old fashioned with the bourbon instead because, the whiskey plays a part in the movie as well. So that was my mentality.
Good job.
You too. I'm glad you're enjoying your Liquid Sunshine.
Yeah. Well, let's continue our beverages as we slide into Act 3.
Act 3 of the hero's journey begins with the road back. The hero is pursued by vengeful forces disturbed when he seized the object of his quest. So as we stated at the end of Act 2, Joel has successfully, at least for the moment, hidden Clementine in his memory, which caused the erasure program to fail. Howard now arrives at Joel's apartment to help Stan. ultimately finds this new memory of Clementine and deletes it. And Mary starts doing this. There's a term for it. The young intern falls for the very aged mentor.
Right.
What is that? What is that? There's like a word for it. There's a term.
Daddy issues, I believe. Psychological term.
There's a psychological. Okay. Anyway, she starts expressing like, oh, I love watching you work, Howard. And, you're almost like a concert pianist the way you. Oh, come on, Mary.
Yeah.
Stan gets up to go outside for some air. And Mary continues these compliments toward Howard and then suddenly leans over and kisses him right on the mouth.
Youch.
Mrs. Mierzwiak now, for some reason, I wasn't quite sure why she showed up.
There's one, I think I can explain this. There's one shot when Stan calls Howard and Howard picks up the phone and he asks for the address. He's writing the address. There's one shot of his wife in bed where she just looks like, oh no, what does he do? Like she has this suspicious look on her face. It's not like a groggy, I'm still awake look. It's like a, something's up. It's just one shot, but it was enough to connect the dots for me as I was watching it for the 12th time or whatever, 13th.
So anyway, she shows up and sees Mary and Howard through the window. And as Howard and Mary rush outside to explain, like Mary's saying, it's a schoolgirl crush and I'm sorry, it'll never happen again. This is the first time. And Howard's making the same excuses. Mrs. Mierzwiak, as she drives away, she tells Mary, you can have him. You already have.
Oh, just.
And Mary's like, what does that mean? And after Mrs. Mierzwiak drives away, Howard says, you and I have a history and you asked to have the procedure to erase that from your memory.
Talk about giving a third dimension to side characters.
Yeah, right?
Just everything in this movie counts. Everything.
So Joel now is still trying to hold on to his memories of Clementine. He remembers approaching her at the bookstore the very first time, after the real first time they met. She's shelving books. He comes up and says, hey, I thought maybe we could go out. And she warns him that she's high maintenance. And he says, I still want to give it another go.
It would be different if we could just give it another go-round.
Remember me. Try your best. Maybe we can.
In that bookstore scene, all the books are shelved spine in, pages out. And it's very unsettling. And until you really zoom in to why, it's like, oh, that's so bizarre. And the signs that like the fiction and bestsellers, those signs are blank by the end of the scene. It's very disturbing.
Wow, Clementine's a really bad bookstore employee for shelving books that way.
And there are no faces. There's no
She's
face
terrible.
outs. Oh, merchandising, Clementine.
It's just terrible. All right, so now back at the clinic, Mary is ransacking the office, going through Howard's files until she finds her own records. There's an audio cassette inside the envelope, and she listens to it. And it's an interview between Howard and Mary is talking about her feelings for Howard.
I was so tongue-tied around you at first. I wanted you to think I was smart. I couldn't wait to come to work. I had these fantasies of us being married and having kids and just... Oh, Howie, I can't do this.
We agreed it's for the best, Mary.
Yeah, I know.
Now we go back to Joel at the beach party where he first met Clementine. And he talks about how he was drawn to her even then in that bright orange sweatshirt. You mentioned this scene already about how she introduces her name and he immediately references Huckleberry Hound and Oh My Darling Clementine, which is a complete opposite of at the very beginning on the train when he says, I don't even know what that song is. I don't know what Huckleberry Hound is. So
great symmetry. Talk about closing the circle.
Yeah, he had those elements erased from his memory. And that's kind of a scary thing when you think about there are elements of history and pop culture that might end up being erased from your memory because you establish a connection.
I'm so glad you brought
that
up.
Person. Like, what if
Let's linger on that for a second, because I'm so glad you brought that up, because one of the things I love about this movie is it's a mythology that kind of explains phenomena that we all feel. Deja vu, feeling like you've met someone before, or even those moments when there's an obvious piece of pop culture or a movie or a song that somehow you've missed, somehow you didn't catch it the first time around, and someone makes a reference to it and you go, what's that? And everyone around you goes, you never heard that song? And you're like, no, I must have missed it. I love when a movie...
You don't know what Left Shark is?
Yeah, that's Left Shark. But I love it when a movie calls out those kinds of things. And The Sixth Sense does that as well. You know, when it's cold, or when, I think when an artist can create something that explains the unexplainable in a plausible or fascinating way, that's part of what makes art so great, that universal experience. Anyway, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's something
like in The Matrix, how they explain what deja vu is.
Yes, it's a glitch in the Matrix. Yes, exactly.
Stuff like that is just so cool. I love that kind of thing. Okay, let me reorient myself here. So they're sitting on these wooden steps that lead up to this house on the beach that you have referenced earlier. And here's the interesting part. It's a memory of their first interaction, but it's also present. It's also Joel's brain, like a dream, playing with that memory. There's this bit about he's got his fried chicken, and she reaches over and says, hey, can I have one of your chicken?
Can I borrow this chicken?
Can I borrow
a piece of your chicken? Yeah.
And then just takes it, and he says to her, and then you just took it without even waiting for my response.
Yeah.
And she's acting like she's not hearing him talk, because this is Joel's inner monologue. He's actually speaking it out loud, but it's in his dream memory.
So good.
Then she looks at him and says,
this is it, Joel. It's gonna be gone soon.
I know.
What do we do?
Enjoy it.
Enjoy it.
Oh, man. That's the first part of the movie that just stabbed me.
Yeah.
And my eyes got immediately wet. Because that's what he's here to learn.
Yeah.
That's what they're both here to learn, is being in the moment and enjoying it as it happens. And the fact that it happens so naturally there, after this whole reliving his relationship in reverse. I mean, think about the trauma and regret that would trigger within you. But he's grown from it. Oh, I can't.
Yeah. I can't. I can't. All right, so now we relive the house. At first, at the beginning of the movie, we're like, why is Joel looking into the windows of these people's house? Like, this seems very invasive. But now we know why. Clementine leads Joel up to the house during this beach party. It's now nighttime, and she breaks in. She's like, it's cold outside. Let's go inside this house where it's warm. Because she knows it's probably a summer home. Nobody's going to be there. You're scowling.
Oh, I just feel like it could have been I was in a dream state, but I feel like we missed the part where he draws her back into the memory of him killing the bird with a hammer.
Go ahead and talk about that. I don't even I completely skipped that here.
So after the bookstore scene where he sort of revisits the time he went and tried and asked her out, and she says, remember me, the erasers catch up with them again, and they start to erase the bookstore, and he's dragging her through the bookstore, and she says, hide me somewhere deeper, hide me in your humiliation. And so they flash back to a scene where he's in his bed masturbating, and his mom walks in and catches him. And
to a comic.
A comic that he drew on Notebook people. And it's like furry, like people with animal heads having sex. It was the most bizarre thing to wank to. And of course, Clementine's kind of laughing at him because she's so hilarious. And he's like, stop it. I don't like it either. And that doesn't work. She says, take me deeper. And so then there's been pre-lap earlier in the bookstore of someone yelling, a kid yelling, bullying things like, come on, you sissy, or something like that. I'm misquoting. And so he takes her back. And now little Joel, child Joel, is standing in front of this red wagon. And he's holding a hammer. And these kids around are egging him on to do something. And he looks down into the wagon and there's a bird. And they egg him on until finally he uses the hammer and kills the bird and immediately starts crying. And now he's crying as grown-up Joel. And in comes Clementine dressed up as a cowgirl in pink, and she drags him away. That was such a real memory. If Charlie Kaufman didn't do that, he knew someone who did, or he did something like, it's too real to be fiction, that moment. And so I love that he felt ashamed. Anyway, we kind of glossed over those parts in this barrage of plot that's happening.
Well, again, this is all happening so fast.
Oh, it's just
because Joel and Clementine are racing through his memory trying to escape the erasers at this point.
Right.
And because Howard's there and he's the professional, he's able to recover the program a lot faster than Stan can. So he's finding these memories. And he even says to Stan, well, at least I'm finding them a lot faster now. So
and again, he thinks he's doing a service to Joel because Joel can't communicate. I want to stop this. So it's incredible that these vengeful forces are all just Joel. It's Joel versus Joel all the way down. He initiated this memory erasure, and now he's fighting against himself. That's the most human experience there is. I want to forget this, but no, I don't. I want to remember it. Oh, it's so...
Yeah.
Kaufman is a genius, and I don't understand how he does this. I don't understand it. I can't.
You shouldn't be expected to.
I can't be expected to. I love doing this podcast with you, Dan. I hope we do it forever and ever and ever.
Okay, so now we're back on the breaking into the house, the beach house.
Yeah.
They're in the house. Joel's not comfortable there. He's like, this isn't right. We should leave. Clementine's like, whatever, let's go find she opens up a cupboard. Alcohol. That's what we're here for. As she's talking about the wine, the house begins to crumble around them. And Joel is realizing this is it. The memory is being deleted. This is the end. He tells his memory of Clementine that he wished he had stayed that night instead of running away.
Yeah.
Which I thought is a callback or a call forward, as it turns out, to when they're at her apartment at the beginning of the movie and she's coming on to him and he wants to leave.
Yeah.
And so Joel actually does run out of the house, the beach house, just as he did that night. But this time, Clementine calls him back.
What if you stayed this time?
I walked out the door. There's no memory left.
Come back and make up a goodbye at least. Let's pretend we had one.
And so he does come back. And as the house is crumbling around them.
Bye, Joel.
I love you.
She whispers.
In Montauk.
And now Joel is in the back seat of Carrie and Rob's car. They're just talking about the party. Rob was flying a remote control airplane, and he's arguing about how I didn't crash the plane. The plane just crashed. And they're having this normal little couples bickering. And then Carrie says, hey, I saw you talking to someone pretty. Who was that? And he just kind of smiles and says, oh, it was just a girl. And then we hear a beep. Howard slams the laptop shut and says,
Okay.
And the procedure's done. Clementine is gone.
I
almost ended it there.
Oh.
But I've got one more element of the road back. But it sounded like you wanted to say something.
Oh, I was just going to say that maybe this was implied, but the meet me in Montauk whisper is obvious. It whispers and echoes. It's more than anything else she says, it somehow resonates. And of course, that's the reason why on the train station at the beginning of the movie, he randomly crosses the tracks to the other side and gets on the train to Montauk. That was the call to adventure, by the way. Boom!
Right, yeah, if we are...
Oh, damn, you didn't know! If we're in reverse, that's the call to adventure. I love it. Love it.
My final element of the road back of the vengeful forces is Mary, the next morning, is carrying a banker's box to her car out of the medical office. Stan, who is returning the van, chases after her.
Hey. You got all your stuff.
Yeah, that's right.
You're not coming back. You know, I wouldn't come back if I was you either.
Do you swear you didn't know?
I swear.
So you didn't do the erasing?
Of course not. God, no.
And you never even suspected we were together?
Once, maybe.
There was one time that I saw the two of you at his car once, and you just looked so happy. But I've never seen that again. So I kind of forgot about it.
Did you believe him?
I did. Did you not?
I believe that Mark Ruffalo was playing it as though he did, but I'm thinking back in the screenplay, and that moment where he laughs at Patrick having stolen the panties is a clue to me that he had a motive to help erase Mary's memory of the affair with Howard because he loves Mary. So I don't think it's explicit in the script or in the film that he was complicit, but I just thought maybe he was, because he would rather have, and you can see several times during the film when she mentions, oh, Howard will be in the quote book one day. You can see him go, oh, okay, yeah. You can see him sort of reacting as though he knows something. So I just thought that was again, there's so much here. There's so much here.
That certainly is open to interpretation. I think interesting. So. Yeah, no, I don't know. I believed him. Maybe it's just Mark Ruffalo. He's just got such a believable face.
Yeah, I believe that was. I believe that as an actor, that's the choice he made. I totally believe that. I just wonder if in the script that was a negotiable point. Like, I wonder if Ruffalo and Michel Gondry had that conversation. Because
otherwise, when Mary asks him, "How did I look?" why would he say you looked really happy? Why would he just say, "Oh, I don't remember. It was a long time ago."
Yeah, that's definitely a counter clue. I'll buy that. But I think there's evidence in both columns.
Unless he just cares about her so much that he wants to be honest with her, at least about that. But again, yeah, it's open to interpretation. Oof. Okay, so she leaves. She puts her banker's box with all of her paraphernalia in the trunk, and as she drives away, we see her back seat is full of banker's boxes with manila envelopes and cassette tapes.
Yeah, sort of obviously perched on the top of the boxes where they would not be.
Well, the boxes are open. Anyway, that for me was the end of the road back, the vengeful forces.
I'll buy that. That leads us to Resurrection. The hero faces death one more time in an ordeal, battle, or showdown. This time the danger is on the broadest scale of the entire story. It's the morning after their first date. Joel stops at Clementine's apartment. We've seen this before, so she can get her toothbrush. Patrick knocks on his window. But this time, we follow Clementine into her apartment as she's gathering her belongings and brushing her teeth. And she's listening to this pathetic voicemail from Patrick. I'll do whatever you want. Tell me I don't understand why you broke up with me. And then on the way back to Joel's car, she just grabs her mail, which I love because it's like, I'm probably not coming back to my apartment for a while. I'm going to grab my mail. And in the car, she opens it and she finds a letter from Mary, who has decided to expose Lacuna and mail all the patient's files and tapes back to them so that they can understand that their memories have been erased. Because if her life was ruined, why can't she ruin everyone else's too? Like, I wish I could believe she had a noble motivation, but based on what we know of her, no. She is wrecking Howard for what he did to her. Absolutely. Ruining his business.
Okay, well, again, open to interpretation. I think she is, after learning the truth of what she did, she has decided that memory erasure is not ethical and wants everybody to be able to make their own choices about how to deal with their memories, even though they've all made the choice of,
right,
I want my memory erased, but you can't properly heal that way, as we've seen, because Mary, even though her memory was erased, she redevelops feelings for Howard. That re-emerges. We see the same thing with Joel. We see the same thing with Clementine. The scene we're about to discuss, let's talk about in the beginning of the movie, when Joel and Clementine happen to be on that Montauk beach at the same time together and in the middle of the snow. Why was Clementine there? If her memory of Joel had been erased, why would she have been on that Montauk beach that day?
100% agree, but Mary, during no point in this film, has shown the wisdom. She reads quotes out of books to sound smarter than she is. She's never shown the wisdom that somehow she has decided that this is ethically irresponsible and that somehow she can decide for all these people who volunteered for this procedure. So I think it is a vengeful force, to be honest with you.
Well, that's why I did include that in the end of.
There you go. It's a vengeful force upon Miss Howard. So she opens the letter. She reads this letter from Mary and then pops in the cassette and hears herself say, "I'm here to erase Joel Barish." Then we hear in great detail everything Clementine hates about Joel, all the ugly thoughts, and everyone's had ugly thoughts about the person that they have fallen in love with. Everyone has things that they would never say out loud or things that they were ashamed to hear that you would never say to the person you love. And we hear all of that explicit.
Yeah.
And both of them are freaked out. Like Clementine doesn't understand what's happening. And Joel is convinced that Clementine is messing with him. So he pulls over and opens the door and kicks her out. And she gets out and walks away. On the way back to her apartment, there's Patrick, who's still trying to make up with her. And she just, get out, get away from me. Doesn't want to have anything to do with him. And she has this sort of, not a meltdown, but this moment of change. So she gets up and she gets in her car, finds Joel's apartment. As she walks into his apartment, she hears his tape playing. And at first, it's not as brutal as hers was. He's saying some nice things about her as well as embarrassing things like she said library instead of library, which I don't know why he didn't break up with her immediately after that, but whatever.
You know what? I wonder... There's also a Simpsons episode where Homer Simpson discovers... He has a brain scan. And he discovers there's a crayon shoved up his nose. And that's why he's so stupid. And they take the crayon out of his brain, and suddenly Homer Simpson becomes very smart.
Oh, no.
And at some point he says, "Notice, I no longer say library or tamari." I go to the library a lot. And every time I say library, Michelle says, "No, it's library." And I always thought she was referencing that episode of The Simpsons, but she might also be referencing this moment of Eternal Sunshine. I don't know. I'll have to ask her.
That's amazing.
Anyhow.
So that tape isn't as brutal, but it's still very hurtful. And he wants to turn it off, but she says, no, it's only fair. So he leaves it on. And then the tape gets really hurtful. And he says, the only way she can get people to like her is by having sex with them. And so how long before she just has sex with everyone? And that's it for her. She says, "I can't believe you said that." And she walks out.
Yeah.
And for a minute, you think Joel's just going to let her walk out, but he comes after her and he says, "Wait." And she says, "What? What do you want?" And he says, "I don't know, just wait." And she does. And they just wait there and they kind of stare at each other for a moment. And then she gives him the "I'm not your manic pixie dream girl" speech that she's already given him twice. And then she lays out the worst case scenario of their relationship.
I'm not a concept, Joel. I'm just a fucked up girl who's looking for my own peace of mind. I'm not perfect.
I can't see anything that I don't like about you.
But you will.
Right now, I can't.
But you will. You will think of things. And I'll get bored with you and feel trapped because that's what happens with me.
Okay.
It's exactly what we've just seen play out. She describes this is what's going to happen. And he just says, okay. Even knowing what future Joel thinks about her, because he's just listened to the tape, and what future Clementine thinks about him, and what she just says, doesn't stop either of them from wanting to be together. That absolutely kills me. I am dead at that point in this movie. I am absolutely crushed emotionally when he says okay and she laughs and says okay. It's like I would do it all over again.
Yep.
That's the end of Resurrection. Their love is rekindled.
For a period of probably less than 2 years.
For sure.
The hero's journey concludes with the freedom to live or return with the elixir. The hero, having won a precious treasure or reward, now returns to the ordinary world to share the spoils of battle. Freedom to Live is very brief. It is a single shot of Joel and Clementine running down the snowy Montauk beach together.
It oddly reminded me of Jaws, where the freedom to live is just them swimming and getting onto the beach. Like, it's just one shot.
In an area that is very similar or close to Montauk.
Yeah,
actually.
right.
Same, different part of the year, obviously.
This movie is basically sunny. Jaws. It's just basically a copy of Jaws.
Pretty much. Patrick is Quint. Yeah, so the two of them are going to relive, knowing what they've been through. They have both chosen to relive that experience again, because the good was better than the bad. Or at least it was worth experiencing the bad. And really, that is what every relationship is. Is this worth experiencing anger and frustration and sadness and hurt feelings? Is all of that manageable because the good is so good?
It's better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. But
Did you find that in your Bartletts?
Yeah. Upon watching this for the bajillionth time, it occurred to me I had a relationship before my marriage to Ami that was messed up and screwed up and bad, but it taught me so much about myself that I wouldn't erase it, because it made me who I was to find the person that I was meant to be with. So in a way, this movie's about that. It might not be the happily ever after relationship that all other romance movies are about. This is about the one that goes wrong but teaches you who you are, and how that's not, you shouldn't erase that. You should keep that and hold it and not regret it. Top 10 movies of all time. It has not been bumped off the list by anything I've seen in the last 20 years.
Not Agent Cody Banks 2, Destination London?
Oddly, no.
Listeners and patrons, thank you so much for joining us for this episode. Please share us with your friends and your families. Word of mouth remains the greatest way that you can support this podcast and keep it going.
Please like us on the social medias, subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast service or on YouTube. And if you would right now, please pull over, get off the treadmill, whatever you're doing, open up your podcast app, or open up Apple Podcasts in particular, and give us a 5-star review. That tweaks the algorithm and gets us more listeners, which is all we want. And if you want to support the podcast monetarily and get some awesome, awesome benefits, like deciding whether we did... Like, if you had been a subscriber and just given us a little bit of money, we could be doing Leaving Las Vegas right now instead of this movie. And wouldn't you all be happier? I know Michelle would.
What? What?
Visit us at patreon.com/Heroes Journey Podcast and see if one of the tiers appeals to you. You can also join our Patreon community for free. Go there anyway. Just see what's there.
Thank you to all patrons who make this show possible, including our demigod patrons. John Peterson Jr., Scott Sanford, Ricky Garvin, Jeff Scott, Joseph Wilbur, Michelle Calderon, Ami Garvin, Salathiel Jones, Jasmine and Pete Hudson, Mike and Susie Zarzana, and Randy Sparks.
We want to thank Taylor Jordan for composing our theme and bumper music, and thank you to Jason Dorff for the episode artwork. You can check out their portfolios on the About page at heroesjourneypodcast.com. The trademark Hero's Journey is used under license from the Joseph Campbell Foundation. Visit www.jcf.org to learn how the foundation promotes and celebrates the work of Joseph Campbell.
Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind is copyright 2004 Focus Features. Thanks again for listening. Until next time,
journey on.